We've all been scammed. Seriously, we've been sold a massive $100 billion lie. For decades, politicians have sworn up and down that housing subsidies are the ultimate magic key to homeownership. They told us it builds communities. They said it makes better citizens. But the hard data? It reveals a mathematically bankrupt illusion. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are absolutely shattering everything you thought you knew about the housing market.
$101 billion. Let that number sink in for a second. In 2014 alone, that is exactly how much the U.S. government spent subsidizing mortgages through tax deductions. We're talking about over 20% of the entire federal deficit back then. And the ultimate excuse for this astronomical price tag? Oh, it was supposedly to get ordinary renters out of cramped apartments and into their very own living rooms.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this policy completely, utterly fails at its one promised goal. This absolute mountain of taxpayer money, it does not turn renters into homeowners. The entire premise is just a fairy tale.
Which immediately raises a pretty glaring question, right? If $100 billion a year isn't putting new families into homes, where is the money actually going? What is it actually buying? To find out, we need to strip away the cozy political talking points and look at the cold, hard, indisputable data. And to get that data, economists had to look all the way across the Atlantic.
Section 5. The Danish Super Experiment.
So for decades, economists were basically just waiting for a real-world test to settle this debate once and for all. And in 1987, Denmark accidentally gave it to them by radically overhauling their entire tax system. They surgically slashed the mortgage deduction for their highest earners. Overnight, borrowing became 80% more expensive for the rich. But for the working class, the subsidy actually increased slightly, by about 6%. This created the absolute perfect, undeniable natural experiment. We finally get to see what happens when you pull the plug on housing subsidies for the wealthy.
Section 7. Data slap. Zero growth.
Now, you would logically think that making homeownership 80% more expensive for top earners would cause a massive earthquake in the housing market, right? Instead, we get the most devastatingly anticlimactic truth in modern economics. And this brilliantly illustrates the reality. Look at this. 30 years. Massive tax overhauls, booms and busts, and it is a completely flat line. Over 3 decades, the rate of people actually owning homes barely moved a single millimeter.
The brutal takeaway here is this. The mathematical foundation for these policies is entirely broken. The increase in actual new home buyers caused by these massive tax breaks, it's exactly zero. The primary justification for handing out billions of your tax dollars is a total, unmitigated mathematical failure.
Section 10. The accidental consequence, mansions and massive debt.
But wait, if billions weren't creating new homeowners, the money didn't just vanish into thin air. It went somewhere, and honestly, the truth is infuriating. The data proves this subsidy did absolutely nothing for the normal renter trying to buy a first home. Instead, it was a massive handout for existing homeowners to just buy larger properties. The exact second the subsidy was slashed for top earners, the square footage of the houses they bought visibly shrank.
It was never about getting people into a new home. It was literally just a massive luxury upgrade for the already wealthy. This policy didn't build communities, it built mansions. Taxpayers were footing the bill for extra bedrooms and bigger lawns for people who already had their foot in the door. Talk about a slap in the face.
Oh, but there is an even darker twist here. When Denmark slashed that tax subsidy, borrowing plummeted by 20%. Think about what that actually means. It tells us the old subsidy wasn't just buying bigger houses, it was actively incentivizing a massive explosion in household debt. People were dangerously over-leveraging themselves simply to max out a government loophole.
You aren't buying a house with these policies. You are buying massive, dangerous debt. The single biggest effect of the mortgage interest deduction has absolutely nothing to do with real estate at all. It just pushes normal households to take on crazy levels of debt to chase a tax break.
Section 15. The Brutal Truth and the Takedown.
It's time to face the music. For decades, we have structured our economies around naive theories that sound wonderful on a debate stage, but totally fail the test of actual data. We bought into this cozy myth that subsidizing mortgages magically turns renters into better, more invested citizens. But the harsh, slap-in-the-face reality from this quasi-experiment is undeniable. Subsidies just create way more debt and much bigger houses for the rich. That's it.
This paper delivers a groundbreaking 30-year reality check. Now, to be perfectly objective, the researchers do note one minor flaw.
They had to rely on somewhat noisy tax desk appraisals rather than perfect market prices. But make no mistake, that minor noise does not change the devastating conclusion here. A billion-dollar myth is totally, completely busted.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply uncomfortable thought to chew on. If subsidizing homeownership is a total lie, if it literally doesn't help the average person buy a home, whose pockets did your tax dollars really line all these years? The next time you hear someone defend these massive real estate tax breaks, remember the data, remember that flat line, and seriously ask yourself who is actually benefiting. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the consensus and keep looking at the data.